designing diversity and inclusion beyond HR. It's one of those topics that we talk about on and off at this conference, last edition, the previous edition. It seems you can never exhaust this topic enough. Let's give it a try. Monica tried yesterday to join us, but couldn't for a variety of vicious reasons of circumstances. But today she's with us. Finally, Monica Stancu, Lloyd's of London Diversity and Inclusion Manager. Monica, I want to hear you really well, and I hope the voice is reaching straight to Krakow. Hi.
Hi,
Hi.
very nice to be here with you.
And
Can you hear
very
me?
nice to have you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Hi.
So we'll start with perhaps the most obvious of questions when I think about going beyond HR in the D&I conversation. Give us the why go beyond HR in the first place, and then how and what.
Yes, so in terms of why, we know there's been so much research that shows that diversity and inclusion is really key to the performance of any organization.
Speaking of which, please feel free to share some of that research in our chat window later. It's always interesting for our audiences. Sure.
Yes. If we really want to make sustainable, robust change in this space, it's important to recognize that we really have to go beyond HR. Diversity and inclusion needs to be embedded in every aspect of the organization, to have a D&I lens to absolutely everything that we do, from people practices indeed. So we start with HR, how we recruit people, how we bring them in the organization, but also once they're in the organization, how we develop them, how we progress them, and then all the way through the exit process and how we collect data on that to understand the experience of our former colleagues in the organization. But then it's really important to recognize that we have to build diversity and inclusion inside out. So how, for instance, if you're a tech company, how do you build tech products that anyone can use? If you are in the trains industry or in the auto industry, how do you make sure that people with disabilities, people with mobility issues can also use your services and the products that you create? So it's really important to think about the communities we serve. And if we think about the communities we serve, naturally we need a diversity of people around the table to make sure that we have different perspectives and we understand the people that we try to serve.
Thank you very much. Before we address more questions, Monica, let's just mention the fact that you're the author of Building Diversity and Inclusion from Commitment to Action, which is an ebook that we definitely want to share with our audience. So we'll be sharing this, as well as books by Sarah and Diversity Hub, authored over the years around different topics. So make sure you stay in our chat window because you'll be getting books today in the most environmentally friendly fashion in some cases. All right, back to our question. Is it a project, really, when we talk about stretching beyond HR, or is it something that should be systemically programmed into the organization, implying that don't start with HR because people think it's HR exclusive?
Yeah, it's definitely not a project. It should be part of the culture of the organization, how you do things every day. So from my perspective, if I were to think about my previous organization, the Royal Academy of Engineering, each team at the Academy had a diversity and inclusion action plan. That plan was developed by the team to reflect the needs that they had. So it was not only about people practices and about culture, but also how they embedded diversity and inclusion in their actual work. So for instance, our events team, their action plan was very much about making sure that their events are as accessible as possible, making sure that all our attendees have the same experience, that we have diverse speaker panels, that we have a diverse audience, that you can, if you have mobility challenges, that you can move around easily, that we use, for instance, sites that are accessible to colleagues with disabilities. So we would ask, if we were to use a space, we would ask them beforehand if that space was accessible, and for people who are in a wheelchair, for instance. Then if I were to think about my comms team, then they were very much focused on making sure that our website is accessible, that our marketing materials include diverse imagery, and that social media as well uses accessible hashtags and accessible images, that they can be read by screen readers, that our text was not too heavy, so it's accessible for people with dyslexia. So they really thought about how to make sure that whatever they did was accessible to everyone. And it wasn't just for one group of people, but they really thought about what does that, if we do this, what does that mean for somebody who is autistic? What does that mean for somebody who is dyslexic? What does that mean for women? Would they feel safe if we were to organize an event in the evening? So all those little things, I think they're really important to think about. So the work that we do is authentic.
Understood. And we often use the metaphor of journey when talking about diversity and inclusion. And we said that we should go beyond HR when it comes to D&I. Are those two different journeys? There is a one that goes into the HR people processes in the organization, and there is another that goes into the business side of it. Can you start with business and then pick up on the HR side? Or you have to start with HR to be able to drive it and mainstream in your product? What is your recommendation on that field?
I think HR is part of it. Because HR, at the end of the day, they are the people that help bring in talent in the organization. And they're also a lot of the time responsible for your well-being resources, your culture strategy. So they are definitely a key important part of this work. But we also have to think about the business as well. So HR is there to enable the success of the business, right? But then we have to think about the business, how we support them. Do they understand the business case? Do they understand what does that mean practically for them? What's the data behind the initiatives that we bring along? And I think we are seeing more and more organizations that are really interested in this. We also think procurement again is starting to become sort of a key partner for diversity and inclusion. Organizations spend a lot of money on suppliers, trainers, laptops, whatever they need for the business. Services or product, they use suppliers. So it's important to think about how we are using our money, how we're spending the money. At Lloyd, for instance, we started working more closely with our procurement team, for instance, to make sure that we have diversity and inclusion as part of the code of conduct for suppliers. Now we're looking to go further than that, to make sure that we ask suppliers when they bid for business for us, we ask suppliers about their diversity and well-being work, and do they have a policy of diversity and inclusion? What's their gender pay gap? Do they offer any training for their employees? So thinking about those things and how you incorporate that in the bigger process, rather than having people thinking that D&I is an add-on. It has to be incorporated in your everyday work.
I really hear that your experience and your organization is way more advanced than many others. So that's definitely great to see the role modeling that you can provide us with. I was wondering, what are you particularly proud of in terms of mainstreaming D&I in your organization?
So I think if I were to think about my previous organization, I definitely am really proud of the fact that we had this model where every team had their own diversity and inclusion action plan, and they owned that. And we were there to support and facilitate and provide advice and data if they needed. But they were the ones that knew their needs the best. So I'm really proud of the fact that they have very clear action plans with clear objectives, accountability, and the leadership backing that up. So I think that was the thing I was most proud of. And then in my current organization, I think I'm really proud of our data approach. We are a very, very data-driven organization. So whatever we want to do, we want to make sure that it's backed by data. And in the UK, so Lloyd's is a global organization. We have offices and all over the world. We operate all over the world, but our headquarters and most of our employees are based in London. And in the UK, we're very lucky because there's a lot of diversity data that we can collect. So we can collect data on ethnicity,
from the continental
religion,
Europe, I can
nationality.
only confirm that we're always jealous of the data you have. However, we are slowly, or actually we have already run out of time, Monica, and there are two very good questions in our chat box.
Okay.
Yes,
Let's check them.
Yes, we have slowly run out of time, absolutely. We've got two questions for you. Katharina is asking one. How do you view the collaboration between HR and hiring managers in terms of DEI in recruitment? And the second one coming from Camille. Do you think close cooperation between HR and DEI officers might actually be risky? Many people perceive HR as focused on company goals and working therefore for the company, and DI is more about employees. And we have 30 seconds to answer that.
Interesting. Yes, very interesting question. So the first question around HR and supporting line managers in recruitment. So in terms of a few examples that I can give you. So HR offers an inclusive hiring workshop for our line managers. So at Lloyd's, you can't do an interview without going through this half-day training. So it's quite intensive. It's offered by an external organization that we partner with. And we teach people, how to review a CV, how to have an interview, to make sure that we really bias that process, and our hiring managers are aware of what the best practices are, rather than just go with their gut feeling. They need to explain why they went with one candidate over another, and make sure that there is a paper trail behind it as well. So they take copious notes during the session. And then we've also done sessions for HR. Actually, I should say that before HR starts supporting the line managers, HR in itself, our recruiters, they need to have a really good basis of understanding of D&I. So with our talent acquisitions colleagues, we've done a session on how to write inclusive job ads. So we encourage them to make sure not to use superlative words like we're looking for extraordinary candidates. So things like that can be very subjective and actually very. It's hard to measure what extraordinary communication skills are.
Thank you.
Indeed.
Thank you, Monica.
Thank you, Monica. We have more questions, but perhaps you could stay with us in the chat and address them directly in the chat.
Exactly. We very much encourage you. In the meanwhile, we have to close this very interesting discussion. I will just address one which doesn't require an answer, just to think about it and maybe respond in the chat window. Katarina is asking, super inspiring that every team has their own DEI action plan. Was this a grassroots movement or a top-down facilitation? An important question. One or two?
It was top-down, actually.
It was top-down. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure to talk to you. Monica
Thank you, Monica.
Stancu, Lloyd's of London. Thank you.
Thank you.